Hi, my name is Julia, and today I'm going to be sharing 5 easy sewing projects that you can make in less than 10 minutes. Each of the projects I'll be sharing would make great handmade gifts. So with the holiday season coming up, I hope that you find this video helpful. Let's start by making a hair elastic. To make this project, you'll need a piece of fabric 25 by 4 inches and a 10-inch piece of elastic. Fold the fabric right sides together and sew along the short edge with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam open. Then fold the edges in by about a 1/2 inch. Now fold the fabric onto itself so that the edges meet, creating a tube. Then top stitch the edges together, leaving an opening of about 1 inch or 2 to thread your elastic through. Using a safety pin, thread the elastic through the tube of fabric, making sure to hold on to the other end. Next, stitch the ends of the elastic together with a zigzag stitch, going over it multiple times to make sure it's secure. Now sew the opening closed, and your hair elastic is finished. Next, let's make a fold-over pouch. You'll need 2 pieces of main fabric and 2 pieces of lining fabric, each 6 by 7 inches. Start by securing a loop of cord to the right side of your main fabric. Place your main fabric pieces right sides together and sew along the edges, leaving the top open. Use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeat this with the lining fabric, leaving a 2-inch opening at the bottom. Mark a 1/2 inch from the seam and draw a square in the bottom corners. Then cut out the squares. Pull the corners out matching the seams and sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeat this for the lining. Now turn the main fabric right side out. Insert the main fabric into the lining, right sides together. Sew along the top edge with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Pulling the fabric through the opening in the lining, turn the pouch right side out. Then sew the opening closed. Push the lining into the main fabric and roll the edges. Then top stitch close to the edge. To do this, I've turned the pouch inside out so that I can see the right side while I'm sewing. Now turn your pouch right side out and hold the top down to see where you want to place your button. Sew on a button and your fold-over pouch is now complete. Next, I'm going to make a glasses or sunglasses case. I'm using main fabric, lining fabric, and cotton batting that are each 5 by 20 inches. Start by lining up the batting with the wrong side of the main fabric. Then place the lining on top of the main fabric, right sides together. And sew along the short edge using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Open it up so that the right sides are visible and sew a line of top stitching along the edge. Now align the right sides together again and shape the unsewn short edge so that the corners are rounded. Peel back the lining fabric all the way and lift the sewn edge to about 3 inches from the top. Align the rest of the lining with the main fabric. Now sew around the edges like this, leaving a small opening at the side and leaving the bottom unsewn. Trim off excess fabric from the edges. Then turn the piece right side out through the opening at the side. Hand sew the opening closed using an invisible stitch, then top stitch around the flap. Now take a small piece of fabric that is approximately 4 by 1.5 inches. Fold over the short edges and stitch them in place. Then fold in half. Fold both edges towards the center, fold in half, then stitch in place. Create a loop and stitch it to the underside of the flap, going over it several times to secure it in place. Mark the button placement, then sew a button to the outer fabric. Your sunglasses case is now finished. The next project is a coaster made with scrap fabric. You'll need a 6.5 by 6.5 inch piece of fabric for the backing, a 5 by 5 inch piece of batting, and a 5 by 5 inch piece of fabric for the front. I've gone ahead and sewn together a couple of pieces of scrap linen to create this one. I'm starting with my main fabric and batting, sewing some decorative top stitching through both layers. Because I'm hand stitching this, it will take more than 10 minutes, but if you wanted to make it faster, you could quilt it using your machine. After top stitching is finished, I place the quilted fabric in the center of the backing fabric. Then fold the edge on itself and over the main fabric. Stitch the edge down using an invisible stitch. Again, this will take longer to do by hand, and if you want to do it quicker, you could edge stitch using a machine. I'm repeating this latter stitch across all the edges. And my coaster is finished. Finally, I'm going to show you how to make a drawstring bag. The materials include 2 pieces of main fabric measuring 8.5 by 9.5 inches, 2 pieces of lining fabric with the same dimensions, and 2 smaller strips of fabric measuring 2 by 8.5 inches. You'll also need some cord. Start by folding over the short edges of the thin strips of fabric and sewing them down with edge stitching. Fold in half, wrong sides together, and press. Now place the folded strip at the center of the top main fabric, with the raw edges towards the top. Place the lining fabric over top, right side down, and sew along the top edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeat this for the other side. Open out and iron the pieces. Then lay them on top of each other, right sides together, making sure to match the seams. Sew along the edges, leaving a gap of a few inches at the bottom of the lining fabric. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Reach through the opening in the lining and turn the bag right side out. Sew the opening closed. And push the lining inside the bag. Now reverse the bag and sew a line of top stitching along the edge of the main fabric. Turn the bag right side out again. Take a 24-inch piece of cord and secure a safety pin to the end. Then feed it through the casing and back through the other side. Tie a knot. And repeat this process starting from the other side of the bag. Your drawstring bag is now complete. And if you've made all the projects, you've now got a nice set of handmade gifts ready for the holiday season.